Alright, there we go. Hey everyone, good evening. Jazion here. So just like I said today, we're going to be working on some arena pieces, some terrain from our friends over at Infinite Dimensions. This is a pretty huge box of stuff, so there is like no way we're going to finish it in just this one session. Just to show off what we have. That huge box of stuff. Like this big box of terrain. This is what I'm going to be working on stream tonight. Hello. Okay, big box of stuff. There we go. And I was just done priming it like a couple of days back. So I have been needing to work on painting this on stream for a while. It's pretty cool. And I figured that'd be also a good time to talk about my approach to terrain painting. To the paints that I use for painting terrain on a larger scale like this, and not just like smaller miniature scale where you normally use your usual miniature paints. Like when you talk about this scale and you need to paint an entire box of terrain, you kind of switch things around a little bit. And that's a fun thing. I actually like the fact that we swap paints because it forces me to think a little bit more about the kind of paints I use. So, as a good example, the paints that I recommend for painting terrain, they tend to be student acrylic paints, not artist acrylic paints. So those are pricey, like student acrylics. So these are normally like big bottles, like this, that you can get in an art supply store. I think that some people they prefer using some of the craft paints, but that's normally in the US where they can get like a bottle that's like this size for like 50 cents or $1 maybe. Down here in Singapore we don't really have that. Those paints are gonna cost us like $2 to $3. No, do not use poster colors, right? Don't use poster colors. In fact, I disagree with using poster colors because they crack very easily, and they are also very water soluble. So I'm not sure if you've heard the story, but I once had a friend who painted his cosplay costume with poster colors, and as we walked back, it started raining. And just the rain down his armor started having the color leaching everywhere. So you don't want that in terrain because you're gonna be touching your terrain. So when you have grabby paws on your terrain, you need to have paints that can stand up to that. I like student acrylics because they are a good mix of having that nice color without being super glossy and desaturated. Because one thing about craft paints is that they can add a lot of additives to them, and sometimes something that they use in those craft paints, making suitable for craft, makes it also that you can really thin them down nicely. Or if you put them on a bit thickly, they get glossy. I don't like the glossy feel. So I use student paints because they are reasonably matte, and if I want to, I can dry brush with them. So you don't normally see me using dry brushing as a technique most of the time because that's not really my painting style. But on terrain, you'll see me dry brushing a lot more often. So I use all kinds of colors, burnt sienna, black, neutral grey. This is a very useful color. I use mixing white sometimes. That's normally zinc white rather than titanium white. But the colors I actually use most often would be like neutral grey, buff titanium, which replaces white in most cases for your terrain, and some burnt umber to go with my burnt sienna because artists are very bad at cooking. And I also have a smaller tube if you want to go for something cheaper of like yellow ochre. That's also a very useful color. and it covers a bit better than most yellows. I also have some cadmium yellow deep hue here as well, but I don't use that as much. That tends to be more for when I need to mix yellow into something. Or if I'm painting some terrain that has fiery effects, then yes, cadmium yellow. So an example of stuff that I've painted using my paints, with a blue that I have like sitting somewhere in the corner, and some violets, is like this. They're not true heavy body acrylics, but they are a lot heavier than your average miniature paints, for sure. They're kind of like in between. Because most heavy body acrylics have a lot more pigment and they're a lot thicker and chunkier. These ones are not quite as fluid as the miniature paints, but they're not that far off either. And so one thing that I do for miniature paints and for painting terrain is that I started doing a lot of undercoating. I kind of like add a bit of color to stuff before I go over them with maybe a glaze of color, or in the case of my terrain, I'll go over with a wash of colors. And how I'm intending to approach this set of terrain is by using a technique that I've been talking about recently, but I've not really done on a super large scale or showed off on stream, and that's using this paint to get in some initial colors and highlights, and then I'll be using oil paints all over the piece to add the weathering and the brown and green that you're gonna get as something is used. And once that's oil paint is done, I'm probably gonna varnish it and maybe go in and pick out the metallics, the parts that I really need to use miniature paints for. But before I get to that point, I need to add some extra color to this because, as you can tell, it's undercoated black with a bit of grey over. And while that does look okay on most pieces, I think I forgot to highlight this part more. This one side is a bit less highlighted than I thought it would be. These pieces are boring, like really boring, and I hate painting stone grey. It's not something I want to do. So even if I'm painting grey stone on a miniature base, I will try and incorporate colors that I use in miniature onto the base somehow. It's great because you don't have to take out new colors to paint a miniature base, and overall it helps the color scheme mesh together a lot better. First of all, I need to decide how am I going to paint these pieces. It's many pieces. So I could start with a big piece and just start working away at it, but I'm going to show you a little bit of how I approach painting wood with terrain, because I know that some people were asking me about it because I use oils for that, and that's really mainly using an underpainting technique. And you're going to start out using the bleaches as a piece. This large chunky ass piece. So I'm going to go into the retirement pile for now. Goodbye, chunky piece. Stay. So not many people are actually familiar with how wood looks in real life, surprisingly enough. And just goes, oh, but it looks like brown. Newsflash, there are a lot of shades of brown. And wood, especially when it's weathered and stepped on and whatever, you don't actually use a lot of brown to paint it. There are a lot of different shades in it, and depending on the kind of wood that you're painting, you can get a lot of really different colors in there. Hi Mazel, glad you could join us. No, but seriously, right? If you ask your friends like, hey, what color is wood? You go, brown law. Maybe reddish brown, like the color that mahogany. That color is called mahogany. So if you want to paint a classic red wood, that's not too hard because you go with a reddish brown like mahogany or a deeper brown and you mix a little bit of red into there and then you highlight up to a little bit of orangey red in your highlights. That's easy. But what about painting weathered wood? So for a friend, back when we were doing a lot of research into wood, it's actually very hard to get normal wood in Singapore. It's hard to get nice lumber. Most of the time what you get is plywood or construction grade lumber, right? And we had to go around the world and try and order in like samples of all kinds of wood colors. And then we did some testing where we put them into the sun and saw how they change over time as they were exposed to sunlight, because sunlight has a bleaching effect. Exactly. And not maho magic. And because sunlight has a bleaching effect, pigments that are exposed to the sun, they tend to slowly desaturate over time, which means they get closer to gray or black or white. And that's generally the case for most kinds of wood. There are some kinds of wood where as you expose them more to the sun, they get more yellowish. They get more golden in color. That's also to be expected because that's just, the top parts of the wood become a little bit more desaturated and shiny over time. And that's just a really roundabout way of saying that you need to think about the kind of wood that you're painting and the conditions that it's exposed to before you start painting the wood. Not everyone's wood is the same kind of wood or the same color. Not all woods, guys. So for the usual kind of style I go for when I want to paint super weathered wood like this is that in order for it to stand out from maybe the gray or brown stone that it's surrounded with, is that I use yellow for it, right? So I kind of use a yellow ochre, which is, when it dries, it's kind of the color of maybe like dark hay. I mean, ochre is like yellowish mud, right? So that's really useful. This color can be used for so many things. If you have it in miniature paint form, it's very good for painting skin because you can add white to it and make a nice ivory to highlight your skin with. So yellow ochre is kind of neutral earth color that I would recommend everyone have in their painting loadout. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna apply yellow ochre all over this bit of wood. Like if there's wood, it's yellow ochre. And then I'll talk more, but these underpainting method as I go. And I'm gonna clean this out because it looks a little disgusting. And let's talk more about painting wood as we go, because it's actually a really fun color to paint. Even if you're painting brown wood for, like, let's say a dungeon door with a single door, you want to paint it at a higher standard using miniature paints, there are a lot of ways to go about that. And I know I should have one glove, sorry, I already have like paint on my hands. This is perfectly normal. Let's go with that. And I'm gonna use a chunky size 8 brush for this. As you can tell, synthetics, they kind of die super fast, so the tip is kind of like ruined already. But it's still reasonably sharp enough for applying paint to terrain, so we'll keep using that. Get plenty of water into the brush. And you will notice that as I'm working with these paints, I actually don't care so much about thinning them down. Because it's fine, it's a different bit of texture. They look interesting. Apply. Look at this, right? So this is a color that you're gonna go, hey, you know, that looks too yellow. That's gonna be really weird. You'll be fine. And you will also notice that I'm doing something that I say I normally don't do, and that's applying yellow or any yellowish color over a gray base. Because if I apply yellow over a cooler base, it ends up looking greenish. Good news, we're painting wood. It's fine if it looks a bit green. In fact, I take advantage of that. So when I'm painting a, let's say a dungeon door, and I want it to look really interesting, I use green for a lot of the door, and I highlight it up with yellow towards the center where I want the light to fall. And in the shadows, I apply a bit of either a purple or a blue wash. And that makes the brown a lot more interesting to look at. Because as you're painting a warm kind of wood, you want cooler shadows to contrast. Look at that. Nice and easy paint job. And normally what I do after this is that if I want this certain portions of the wood to be a little brighter, I take a bit of the titanium buff and then I go over that one part. But I'm not super fast about that right now. I just want to make sure that the wood consistently has a nice coat of yellow. It doesn't even have to perfectly cover everything. Which is why painting terrain is great sometimes, because it's just casual brush control practice. And you can practice your wet blending on terrain or a base. Like, I don't know why, but I've had some miniature painters tell me that, you know, painting terrain is scary because it's so much larger than painting a miniature. And like, I can understand that, but honestly speaking, painting terrain is relaxing because there's less stress about making mistakes. Even if you're painting the same things that you get in a miniature. And for the longest time, I've said this a few times, but for the longest time, I kind of bounce off painting miniatures. Absolutely true. It means more things to look at, and it means a larger surface for you to practice your wet blending on. Also, if you look at the walls around you in real life, they are rarely one solid color. The imperfections that you're scared of in painting miniatures make terrain interesting. And there are a couple of small strings here and there that I've noticed as I'm working on this. Might go back and cut them off and clean up some of the supports that I missed as well. But I'm not too fast. I know some terrain painters who are incredibly picky about their work, and they paint all the terrain in some incredible detail. I would do that, but not on a piece that was FDM printed, because I don't like the lines. And I find that because I am being a little rough with the way I paint, in terms of not caring about brushstrokes and everything else, it helps hide the fact that this was not the most perfect print either. It's also faster to paint. That is a huge bonus. So when you're painting larger scale stuff, you kind of want to think about your painting methods. Most miniature painting is what we call an additive style of painting, where you add things on, you add color on. But when you are painting terrain and you need to get some color down on places, but also have some like different highlights and stuff, that's when you start looking at painting techniques like washes and using a sponge maybe to remove the color from the highlight areas. And that's what we call a more subtractive style of painting, where you remove paint or pigment or whatever from wherever you're painting. And that's when people start getting things like, using oil paints for that, because with oils, they don't dry as fast. So you have a longer working time. Incidentally, that's also why I got into using oil paints. I don't use them very often because they can be a little messy to work with for me. But when I do use them, they are very useful. You just need to have the right use for them and to not just write them off as something that's for advanced painters. For example, I have a friend that does a lot of work in oil paints, and he can paint entire busts in the time it takes for me to paint like one miniature. And he's tried all kinds of paints, but painting in oils is just what really got him to painting. It just felt right for him. So don't be afraid to try more things, but most importantly, don't just buy things because they think will make you a better painter. And I say this as someone that has a lot of paints, and have tried a lot of paints. But some things just aren't worth purchasing unless you know you have a use for them. And it's not just reading like the latest reviews and going, oh wow, that's gonna make me awesome, and buying something out of hype. It's just as important to think about buying stuff mindfully as it is to paint mindfully. In fact, I try to do all my thinking before I paint so that I can just not think when I paint and focus more on things like, let's get this nice blend down. Let me get the highlight placement for this right, and so on and so forth. I tend to overthink things. I'm not the kind of painter that just throws on colors and that's all. I like to think about the character I'm painting, the lighting, the mood of the piece. So, I may be random sometimes, but that's because I tend to have an overall direction. Like, this is gonna be creepy AF. I don't care what I throw on it, still looks creepy in the end. Boom, plate crawlers. Well, speaking of painting with like not much of a plan, I did come in third in that Victor's paint contest that I that I entered at the last minute. So it's not a bad thing. I have more things to paint. Not too shabby for my first paint contest ever. They just came out. I came in third. I should share the link somewhere in chat. Uno momento. I had it somewhere. I mean, I know what parts I should improve on. It's pretty obvious for me. Okay, copy. Incoming post in chat. Okay, Control V. Well, yes, that might help. Not rushing at the last minute is a great idea. But it was fun. It was actually really fun. That's the important thing. I had fun. Look, I stuck him straight on the first time, and then he broke off when I was painting him, so I stuck him on sideways. Okay, I like him tilting. It represented me tilting as I painted. The tilt is a representation of the painter's tilting as the night went on. That's my story, I'm sticking to it. Set face. It's also like, because I kind of wanted to have him have a couple of extra things in there, but I felt that they might distract from the base as a whole. Because I kind of wanted to have some like dead bodies piled up around him. And then I was like, you know what? I would like to sleep sometime tonight. So I went home and I did not sleep. This is perfectly incorrect. Okay. I don't actually have to worry too much about base coating the parts that are on the inside because they won't be as exposed to the elements, and when I go over them with a transparent brown color, they'll be fine. So right now you can kind of see the wear that has happened on this piece. Put a little bit more yellow here. And it just looks like terrible, right? It looks super greenish and disgusting. And if you think about it, arenas were a pretty disgusting place in the past. It's like football stadiums without anywhere to clean up the football fans. Disgusting. And also see the tiny supports underneath this thing? I should probably remove them. Probably. And like football fans especially have let's just say there's a reason the Games Workshop orcs were initially like designed to be a satirical impression of football fans in the UK. Like, oh no, my team lost, it's time to riot. Why? I don't know. Healthy coping mechanisms, what are those? Go away, cow. Do not sneak attack me. I am painting. Nobody. No, nobody. Crimson is too busy writing his DC to sneak attack me. Or he fell asleep, either way. So you can kind of get an idea of the highlights in this piece as well. Just where the yellow is going. I guess give a quick example of what happens when I add titanium buff. Rawr, Charizard Rawr. I like using a titanium buff because it gives the yellow ochre better coverage. So you can kind of see like right away that that spot gets a lot brighter. And you also notice that I don't really din that much for this kind of stuff. Let's see. Highlights. But that's it. I'm really happy with how it tends to look after I put on the burnt umber oil wash. So that's gonna be the future of this piece. Right now it is going through the I am ugly AF stage. Or as you like to call it, puberty. This is the kind of thing that if I chose to airbrush it, might be a lot faster in some ways, but you lose a bit of the character that I get from putting on an uneven coat. But of course, I still want to paint fast, so I will apply this with all the finesse of a toddler. And that, which is actually not that bad because some toddlers have more finesse than many adults. You will also note that this veiling has a whole bunch of twine and whatnot holding together. I will ignore it. That's because I will likely be painting them a slightly different color. I'll just dry brush it on some highlights later on. And if I paint them a different yellowish ochre and then highlight them with the same white tones, it's gonna look a lot better at tying everything together. So remember, with terrain, get your underpainting right, get your various colors in there first. It's fine if it looks messy. Once you highlight everything, it's gonna all come together. Same as painting miniature. So this is kind of the technique that I've decided on after painting a lot of terrain. And doing it, the more time-consuming miniature painting way, or painting almost entirely with oils. And I think it works pretty well for me. Right? The green tone is really obvious. I think it's a great example of what it looks like with green tone. It's not a bad thing on its own if you want something to look a little bit more weathered, but when you want something that's bright and sunny or very warm colored, then that's when you have to bring in the red or the orange underneath the yellow to get there first. So magenta is a great undercoat for yellow, as is red and orange, or even just baby pink. So if you want to paint a gorgeously, interestingly colored yellow that goes from orange all the way to bright white, you might undercoat with some red and then shade up with some orange and so on. And then you just glaze yellow over with maybe like some white highlights first. And that's gonna get you a gorgeous yellow, and the yellow will work to blend all the layers underneath together. But that's also why a lot of people tend to charge more for painting yellow, because it's not that it's impossible to get it to look good or less green, but it does take a little bit more prep work. And if I'm doing a commission paint job, then that's gonna take a bit of time out of everything else. So I have to work up slowly from certain colors. Some of the commission painters I know have like a painting yellow and painting white charge. Understandable. Also, because these are student acrylics, they don't tend to have as good a coverage, because artist acrylics don't tend to have extremely good coverage, because they tend to have single or maybe double pigment mixes in them. Miniature paints often have black or white added into the mix, so that they can cover better maybe one or two thin coats. So the reason you have some people going back to using artist paints is because they have less pigments in them, and most of the time they list the pigments that they use. It's a lot easier to get consistent mixes with them. Like, you're not gonna mix, two colors and boom, because your red had maybe a bit of black in there, suddenly your yellow looks greenish. You don't want that. The only downside is that unless you really know what you're doing, artist acrylics can be hard to work with because you're gonna put on the color and go, why is this not the color I want? You really have to put in the effort to learn the pigments and the colors. Shading in at the bottom. And these are also supports that might have been removed, but they look kind of good as they are, so I'm keeping them in there. But just hitting them with a little bit of the yellow. Because to be honest, this is going to be built as like one piece like this. The underside isn't really super important. Right, that's why the pieces are joined up. It's time to add more yellow ochre. Though I might actually change brushes for a bit. Use a flatter brush to apply more paint faster. And I'm adding a bit of cadmium yellow deep hue this time. You can tell it's a little brighter, more saturated than the yellow ochre. And then a lot more yellow ochre. So yellow ochre is more of a mustard color. Cadmium yellow deep hue is more of a lemon yellow kind of color. And I'll be right back and we'll grab another brush. Toodles. Oh, flat brush, where have I put you? Ah, I have returned and almost fallen. It was close. Or not so close. Because I'm good at dexterity saves. And no one saw that. So I'm grabbing a couple of flat brushes. These brushes are kind of super fucked up. But that also means they're great for dry brushing, if I need to dry brush. Just wash off this brush a little bit more. Still a little bit of yellow in there. And also these brushes, if I recall, they are actually... I'm not sure if they're synthetic or not, they might be just cheap natural hair brushes. But that's fine because having cheap brushes is important. Everyone needs some cheap brushes. pieces I still have to go. Will this ever end? Probably not. Let's swap to a new piece of paper. So yeah, these acrylics are, as you were asking just now, they're definitely a lot more heavy bodied. You can tell in the way that the paint sits on the palette. But at the same time, because of the way they thin down, they're not quite as creamy when they thin down as like some of the nicer artist acrylics. I wouldn't really categorize them as super heavy body. But they're actually very nice to work with. Yeah, it's super big chunk. It's gonna be incredible when it's done. Like just the scale of it. So as you notice, after adding a little bit of the cadmium yellow, when I put the color on, it's a lot stronger. It covers a lot better. And that's because of the cadmium pigment. Which is why cadmium is a very good color, but it's also being slowly replaced over the years with other pigments because of how toxic it is. And that's one thing you need to know. Be careful for when you're using artist paints. Yes, some of them are cheap, but if you are painting with kids, for example, or you have a habit of putting a brush in your mouth, don't do that. You don't want to deal with poisoning from artist supplies. So cadmium, for example, doesn't really get flushed out of your body. So if you keep licking your paintbrushes, you're gonna end up with an excess amount of cadmium in your body. And heavy metal poisoning does cause death or insanity. There was an artist in recent years who fell really sick because of the way she did art. She would use seashells in her paint. I think she used like mussels and oysters as well. And because she would grind them up, and as you know, if you are at the bottom of the sea, you're gonna have a lot of bad stuff building up in your body. She got really sick because of it. So most miniature paints will not have this pigment at all. The artist paints might. So know your pigments. Touching them won't kill you, of course. Using them in small amounts in your paint, or even just using them directly normally is also perfectly fine, but don't lick your brush. Do not ingest heavy metals. Heavy metal is meant to be listened to and not eaten. It's also a style of painting. So check it out. The coverage between this and this, using a little bit more of the cadmium yellow. You can tell it's better covering. Because it also helps that I'm using a large flat brush, so I paint a lot faster. And notice that at times I'm kind of just hitting the sides of things with the brush and over brushing certain areas. Almost like I'm dry brushing, but with a lot more paint. That also works. And a lot of that is how I get some simple wet blends when the paint is still wet. I put another color and I kind of like apply highlights by stippling in or hitting the upper areas of the place I'm painting. That's called overbrushing. And if you're good with overbrushing, I mean, it's the same as dry brushing, just with more wet paint. So you don't have as much texture. If you're good with it, it's a very easy way to do some quick glow effects. Or smoke effects, as I know you've been trying to paint recently. And in fact, I looked at the miniature and I saw that it's on the right path. It just needs that bit more work to get the light effect looking really right. Most of it just comes down to adding more white so that it looks as though it's glowing. Yes, I should probably do the Genshin event too. And by the way, if you get some good pools, you can post them in the video game portion of the server. Like, I know someone just got 2 Ayatos from single pools. 2 Ayato. I'm salty. Just a bit salty. Fellow gacha game players, let's unite. And post more things in the video games channel. Oh, that's a great pool. Do you manage to get the C1 Hu or still C0? She's such a big power boost at C1 that it's almost a waste to leave her at C0. But no, don't want. My body cries. Oh, it's not that bad. My Hu is at least still doing decent damage. Though she's not as well built as my other characters. My most well built character is probably Xiao. Because he's a good boy. Wow, so what's occurring now? How many constellations is she at? C4 cutscene, that's not bad. If Phantom was on here, he could show you his C6 cutscene. Poor boy. C2 looks alright. I don't even have it to do. I mean, he's not quite meta anymore, but he's still solid. C3 Ember? Yeah, I think mine's at C2, I'm not sure. It happened back when I was trying to roll for, I think, something, and then I rolled a Amos bow instead. So as the only other user of the Amos bow other than Kanri, I angrily leveled my Ember, who is now level like 80 out of 90. And using the Amos bow. 4-set Wanderer's Troop with actually some very nice stats. So it's just like, fire arrows coming from behind and vaporizing something for like 25k. That's my Ember. She does decent damage, I'm not kidding. Just angry leveling of Ember. After I lost 50-50 to Amos bow. I think I was trying for a Staff of Homa. But instead I got Wolf's Gravestone and Amos bow. Reasonably decent, but it's a lot of investment. Like, I farmed for weeks just to get the artifacts for myself. And they're still not perfect, but right now he's sitting at like... So with his initial artifact set, he was sitting at 94% crit rate and 170, 180 crit damage. With his new set of artifacts in the new domain, he has, I think, about 60 something, 70% crit rate and 212 crit damage. So he does pretty decent damage. You just need a better crit rate bow. Crit damage helmet. And yes, Crimson Mage domain is such a pain. But if you build your Hu Tao with artifacts instead, you can do double HP. Or just give her like double attack. You should post a stat sometime in chat. I'm very proud of him. He's my only 10-10-10 character. And it's very satisfying when, like, without much in the way of buffs, he's hitting like 60k on the planche attack. Oh, you have Ayaka, nice. Are you gonna try and get her to a higher constellation? Song's not bad. Killjoy chicken. Oh, that's nice. I'm very terrible with getting like the signature weapons for characters, so I don't even try anymore. Except for the Amos Bow Ember, that's like by accident. Yeah, sounds about right. Because with the double cryo resonance, I assume that you're running as well. But crit should be common. Like with Ayaka, the hard thing is not getting the crit rate too high. Then I can never have enough polearms, so I was farming polearms for the longest time. I have like an R8 deathmatch because I needed more than one polearm. So myself is in R5 deathmatch. Ayaka Shenhe, very nice. Shenhe's burst is just amazing. It's like Rosaria, but better. But that's a very solid team. Just that, I forgot to do Abyss before I vote over. I heard the new Abyss is not bad, so I should do it. But I'm so lazy. I know, but it's a good source of primal gems. So I normally only do it when I'm desperate and want a bit more gems to go on the character banner. That's when desperation kicks in, man. A lot more to yellow then. Wait. Banner is great, shut up. And yes, G now as well, right? Do Sunfire. Maybe one day we just do a Genshin Impact stream where we clear like bosses. You can see like Crimson and I playing Genshin. Can do a boss world tour. You can watch me play Yae Miko and miss all my ultimates. I mean, all my bursts. No, you should just play from Crimson's point of view, it's funnier. So get Crimson to stream on here, then I can play from the other computer. And you can watch him start combat without knowing that I'm still loading in. And get yelled at for it. Every single time. This is one time we were fighting the Raiden Shogun boss, and he kept attacking me instead of her. It was very annoying. Like, I'll turn around and like, why is this guy throwing all his bursts at me? Hello? Hello? I'm not even playing like Raiden right now. Like, I would swap to her just to throw her E and then swap back to Yai, and then I would turn around and you'd be throwing all your bursts at me. But you know what would be a fun stream if it ever comes back? The cube event. The boss rushes. That you could do a co-op. Those are so fun. No. I'm a bad FPS player. How do you FPS? FPSing is hard. But it was basically the Spider-Man meme. Especially when she put up her shield and I just deleted it super fast. Yes, but we are so busy. Speaking of which, we are 1 hour into the stream. I have 1 hour to go before I'm supposed to be finishing up the stream, so let me go as fast as I can. I'm just getting this wood underpainted helps a lot. Speed paint. And to be fair, I'm doing the bleaches, and that's where like the majority of the wood is concentrated. Oh, that sounds terrible about contacts. Popcorning effect? What popcorning effect? What you mean? Texture of the paints. The fact that it looks like butter. Both. I'm using like a lot thicker paint than I normally do, and I'm applying in a way where I don't really care about whether or not there is some texture, but it's also the model that I'm applying it to. As you can tell, I'm applying like super roughly and unevenly. And that's actually intentional because it's underpainting before I go over with brown with oil paints eventually. So I'm not painting smoothly, I'm kind of just tapping my brush against parts and getting that texture of light. Some of it's also the texture of the 3D paint itself. So I've done these pieces. Let me wash my brush. Why not use airbrush for base coat? Because it takes more time for me to mask off the place, mask off the piece, and with an airbrush than it does with just paint. Hey Mike! Hey! Mike Moons is rating. Thank you, Mike. And hey Summit, I see you are back. Can we get a shout out from Mike in chat? Hey Ghostbox! Oh no, Carl, do not sneak attack me. This is now a bad time to sneak attack. But hey guys, I'm glad you could join us tonight. Hello friends from around the world. It's like 9:36 p.m. here. I am painting something from Infinite Dimensions. It's a 3D printed piece from their Torbridge Cow Kickstarter. And I am showing how I underpaint terrain. And I am painting the wood up with a yellow undercoat so that when I go over with oil paints eventually and get that brown tone in there, it'll still have some weathered yellow tones. So it's pretty cool. No hats, no sneak attack. You were painting slide. Rex Lapis, go away! Crimson's bullying me. Yeah, so this is one of the things that people can get really confused when they see me painting this because it looks so weird to be painting something yellow at the start. But you don't realize that when you're actually painting wood, a lot of the color in wood isn't really just pure brown. It's kind of like yellowish brown or even reddish brown or grayish brown. So when you underpaint wood and you go over... Do I have to wear a stupid hat? Okay, stupid hat time it is. Stupid hat. Kenson is bullying me, making me wear stupid hats. Stupid hat time. Okay. No, this looks dumb. Don't like stupid hats. Why not wear stupid hats? Razel, why bully? Okay, stupid hat time. Luckily this fits so far. Just fine. Okay. Okay. It is stupid hat, but it is kinda cute. So if you want to pick up your own silly cute hat and you like Genshin Impacts, you might want to check out Etsy store because Angela's Atelier does some beautifully cute hats. Okay, they're kind of cute, a little bit cute. And if you want your own custom Genshin Impact hat, then she can do that for you. It's a great gift for fans of the game. And yes, that's totally true about old wood. So I'm used to some of the more tropical woods around here because there's a lot easy to get locally, and I noticed that when you put them in sunlight, after a while they actually turn golden. So right now I'm using some student acrylics, a bit of yellow ochre from Data Valley, because it's cheap in large amounts like this. And then when I go over with the burnt umber oil paints, I can kind of adjust how much of the yellow I want to show through and underneath. It's also really fun because if I'm doing yellow wood, by adding blue, I can have some really nice greenish bluish shadows, and that really helps bring out the color of the wood and makes it more interesting. But yeah, I like having tan as well, but I found that if I was gonna go over for really heavy oil tone, I wanted something that's a little stronger. That's also why I have some of the titanium buff on here. So it's not a really great off-white, a nice cream color. I use that for painting stucco as well, but if I want increased coverage on anything I'm painting, I just mix a little bit in and go for it. So when painting FDM prints like this, where I don't want to be as precise, and I kind of want to use a bit of texture to hide the print lines, it's fantastic. Student paints are a great buy, and if you don't have craft paints in your area for cheap, these are a lot cheaper. So here in Singapore, a bottle of miniature paint is going to cost you maybe maybe a bit over $6. But this single big bottle of paint, it's like what, $11.90, $12? So if there's a color that you're gonna use a lot in your miniature painting for terrain, especially like yellow ochre, and it's actually quite worth it to just pick up a bottle or even a small tube of paint. But yeah, so I heard you were painting sluts. What kind of sluts? Blue, green, yellow, red, pink, purple. Deaf sluts? Red and blue. Nice. What you painting them up for? Is it a special event so you're gonna use them during D&D? Or are they for like a commission? Painting sluts is actually pretty tough. Here's some really bright cartoony colors on them, but you want to make sure that they still pop and look a bit menacing. Well, I'm sure your players would love to run into some. And the nice thing is that, if you run into one, they're normally more nearby. So it's a great way to set up future encounters with sluts, various aberrations, their servants. A whole gaggle of sluts. Just spellcasting frogs everywhere. So I don't actually need this for a game anytime soon, I hope, but I figured that if I left this on the back burner for super long, it would just never be painted. Which is why I'm trying to force myself to get as much done on this as possible before I get distracted painting other stuff. But like stuff that I've been painting up that I'll be using on the table soon, it's like, okay, let me stretch, and get that. These lovely crystal platforms. Check them out, so pretty. And I was, testing out some magenta paints on them, and I think I kind of really nailed the dark, very saturated glow effect. They really pop on screen. Yeah. So these are actually for a game that's coming this weekend. Don't tell them that. I don't think they watch the stream, so we are safe. And I have a few pieces. Okay. Grab more. More of my cavern pieces. So yeah, it's this crystal platforms. So Crimson is running a game this Saturday, and it's a homebrew game, and they just descended into the mines. So these are the pieces that I've quickly painted up for them. I still have to do maybe a little bit of dry brushing and touch up some pieces where like paint spilled when I was painting it with the airbrush. It is terrain. So this will actually be pieces that they'll be using on the table. And they go some about previously painted crystal platforms, but yeah. It's not gonna be streamed, not yet, but maybe in the future. And I'm actually working on a couple of other pieces for it, like an ooze dragon. So that's still waiting to be washed and cured, so I can't show it off right now, but it's just in this beautifully translucent green resin. And I'm gonna show it off after the game, right? So I'm gonna post that on social media really soon because it's too nice not to show off. But yeah, I really love painting terrain, guys. It's my zen thing to do. Like, I love painting miniatures, but there's something about painting terrain that I love. It's just so easy to get such a nice effect on terrain. But yeah, I'll be taking photos, might do a video, because it's gonna be a pretty big encounter for them. Their first major boss fight in the campaign for them. So I want to make it a little special. Paint out some new terrain that they've not seen before, and it's gonna come out. And then big boss, this giant oozy dragon thing. They might be a little traumatized, but I think that's alright. As a dungeon master, you should be happy when your players are a little bit traumatized, because it means they remember what happened. Yep, so I got a fan to 3D this for me because I was too busy printing other stuff, and I think he did a great job on that. I also have a whole bunch of silvers and stuff I need to paint up, but I'm waiting for him to finish with everything so I can just paint it all at once. But I just really like the deep magenta color. Like I did, this was mainly airbrush. I did go over a little bit of grey, of like bright grey before in that area before I went over the magenta, but I think that just how saturated the magenta is sells the glow effect on its own. And that's a good thing. Silvers, yeah. Yeah, all kinds of silver pieces. And honestly speaking, I love painting terrain, like getting all these fun special effects, painting weathering on wood. I love it. Though I've been using a lot of the same terrain painting techniques where I underpaint more colors, a lot more in miniature painting recently, and that's been getting me some good effects. So for that campaign that they'll be fighting that Ooze Dragon in, there's definitely something creepy going on there. And I went to go and get. I streamed some of my painting that day for some of the monsters that we'll be fighting. Let me get them. Blade crawlers. Come over here. Are they in here? Yes, they are. Okay, it's time to show off the WIP. So I was just working on this recently. Some cute. This spidery friends. These are not done yet. I'll be working on them on Friday. but I got some underpainting done of them because I've been messing around with, you know, painting different colors as shadows and then highlighting over them with like a mid-tone and highlight. And I find that it gives really nice creepy effects. So these are disgustingly unsettling. And this is sound like the kind of creatures that they'll be fighting in the campaign. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how they fare. So cute friends. If you follow us on Instagram or follow me on Instagram, you should have seen that me post them by now. If not, you should really follow us because we post all kinds of stuff from our campaign tables and our game bookings. Studio is pretty fun because you get access to all this terrain, all this cool stuff that I paint, which means that, you know, it really bumps up the spectacle of a D&D game. Like, you know, not every D&D game has to be a lot of terrain to be really cool or important. But I do find that sometimes just having everything like that on the table makes it a joy to play with. And it feels a little less tactical than playing a grid map all the time. Not that I mind grid maps, they're useful, but sometimes I find that when you have a battle map down like that, players get too focused on being tactical. And they neglect the other aspects of the game. This bit is kind of loose because I think that the filament is not fully set in there. I'll probably be on for maybe another 45 minutes or so. So if you want to look, go ahead, mate. But it's actually gonna be a super busy day for me tomorrow. We have to head to some special events. But it does mean that if you wanna hear more about D&D, you should come join us tomorrow for a stream. Because we'll be talking about D&D and more. Yep. So we'll be hosting a watch party for the event, and if you have questions for the Wizards team, we can ask them for you. It's gonna be really fun, but it's also gonna be really late. It starts at like past 11 o'clock our time. Which is great for you overseas friends in like the UK or American friends, but not so much for us. So if it's gonna be a really late night tomorrow, then I gotta call it early tonight. I'm just doing my best to complete as much of this as I can. And also because I need lots of stuff to work on and paint and prime and the backlog. The backlog is just growing. So my goal is to get this kind of like painted up to a reasonable standard. That I can actually be happy about. And as I get the chance to, I will work on improving it. Because it is a beautiful design. They did really well this piece. That you will notice that the doors can be open and closed. And as we all know, D&D players love doors, right? Look, it opens and closes. We'll be stuck here for half an hour playing with it. That's how it goes. Okay, looks like there's a little sconce there. A little bit of fire in there. Let's hit it with a little bit of the titanium white. There we go. Nice and quick glow. So, by the way, for those of you that don't know how much I'm trying to paint, this box in the back here holds the rest of the terrain that I'm working on right now. But yes, tomorrow's a big day. And life is tiring. Oh wait, I'm not done with that yet. Come back here. The reading on the front still needs to be painted. So get back to that. So back when I was deciding like what to paint this, Crimson kept saying, "Oh, we should paint it grey, like grey stone." And then we were arguing for a bit because I actually really dislike painting everything grey. But at the same time, I don't want to paint it a color that's too unique to any one area. Because that would mean that it's a lot harder to reuse. So in the end, I think we decided on painting this with kind of like a white stone effect. Which means that with all this grey basing, I'm going to spend some time with a dry brush. Kind of like dry brushing the stone up to a off-white tone. But first I'll need to weather it. And then go back and then dry brush it up more after. And when we're talking about painting this, I had to pull up lots of references. And I actually like following actual real-world architecture for references sometimes. So when we're looking at this, we're looking at some of the places that they used to film Game of Thrones, like the fighting pits. And you will find that most of that, it's actually white stone. And if you look at a lot of the classic castles, a surprising amount are actually white stone. They're not grey. So if you want to paint more interesting colors, don't just paint grey stone. Paint them white. Paint them red, brown. Pink even. And it's always a great idea to go and look at actual historical sites and pictures of them. Because I got lots of inspiration from looking at castles on architectural sites. And I'm hoping that, if just a little bit of that inspiration shows through as I'm painting this, and I'd be happy. Because there are some gorgeous castles out there. Especially in Germany. I just need to spend a little bit of time adjusting this because this isn't quite a castle, it's a bit more lived in, it's rough. It's a fieldstone construction. you have lots of rocks of like differing sizes that all fit into one wall. So like, between the cracks, you're gonna have a lot of mortar than everything else. And what I may want to do is probably go in and maybe paint up a few of the little smaller stones in there with a different color. And yes, absolutely, stone looks super different when wet. When you wet stone, it brings out the colors in the stone. It becomes a lot more saturated. It's not when you put like gloss on any kind of surface. You get some really gorgeous colors. So like I think a good example is maybe river stones. Or if you've gone out hiking, or you've been to like a few sites in nature that have pretty rock formations, use that as a reference. Like you absolutely do not have to paint just normal grey stone. And like not every metal has to be iron as well. You might find a lot more copper and bronze, especially for pieces where it didn't matter if they were a little more soft. And that's gonna add a little extra color to your terrain. Which is important because as a dungeon master, if you're going to do all the effort to print up or to buy and then to paint up all these pieces, you want to make them a little more interesting. And honestly speaking, people have always loved pretty colors. Like all the classic Grecian-Roman statues, they might be pure white marble now, but centuries ago, they were once all painted up. They use, you know, the brightest colors, beautiful colors, and had them all inlaid on their walls. Pretty stones, shiny stones. And if anyone ever tells you that it's not historical and it's not realistic to have pretty colors in your fantasy setting, tell them to go read a book. Then put it this way, right? You're the one painting it. If you don't have fun while painting it, then why paint it? Also, if you don't have fun painting it, that's what friends are for. So, even though this kind of painting can get a little boring, it's a good thing that I'm streaming right now because, you know, I have you guys to keep me company and help with making this process a little less tedious. And that's always appreciated. Thank you, guys. I appreciate the company. No. Anyway, one thing I also really like about this set of terrain is that it has a lot of small details. So some of these pieces kind of fit together. And this I use as a holding area for people to maybe mill around, buy tickets. It's also the interior areas. And lots of places to hide. Pens or places for the gladiators to sit and relax. So this fits together. And it fits together this little socket and peg here. So if you look from the outside, this might be a place where, you know, gladiators come in and are then shown to the inside, where they can maybe have a moment to compose themselves, leave their possessions, prepare your weapons maybe. And I like the fact that, you know, it's so playable. It's easy enough to just pull it apart and take a look on the inside. There's not a lot of terrain out there that has the playability of their terrain in mind when they're doing stuff. Like, sometimes it looks beautiful, but because the spaces are so small and enclosed, if you put a miniature in there, it's just lost. And because this is actually an area with like a roof, top and wall cut away, if you want, you can just hide this area away. So, at least with this terrain, you can pull it apart and peek inside as things happen. Of course, there is the main viewing area. This is kind of like the, I guess, the VIP booth, where you get to stand up here and overlook the gladiators or whatever as they kind of come into the arena. It's like the main entrance. So there's some space, if you have some terrain here that you want to put like some chairs, that's a great spot to have them. And then the staircase moves up in the long side. And goes down and comes out through here. So this staircase, that goes out here, goes down, inside, and comes out through here. So if you are having a kind of encounter where maybe your party characters have to dodge guards or sneak in and maybe speak to someone or assassinate them if we're in a VIP booth, then that's something that you could do. It's terrain that lends itself well to that. Another pet peeve. On the other side, the opposite end of the arena, it's a nice like coward's nuke. Also a couple of supports that need to be moved. Let's see, no supports here. I thought they were part of the terrain at first, but they are not. And at the top, there's this special access area where, you know, the judge can stand, the big VVIP can stand with a special seat, I guess. And it's a really cool way of accessing this interior, which is also a big playable area. You can sneak up and around. Another piece sits on top here. Like ultimately, when we were working on deciding like what terrain pieces we wanted to have, we wanted something that could work as a kind of like more rundown fighting pit, but at the same time we also wanted something that was not just like the classic Coliseum. Not the classic Coliseum style. It doesn't have much in the way of like bleachers to sit, and there's not a lot of like playable area in the arena itself for you to move between zones and to do all kinds of things. So ultimately we decided on this set of fighting pits. And the fighting pits were originally just like one circular fighting pits in the Kickstarter, but by popular demand, they added some extensions so that you can make them a little longer, so that it becomes more of an oval rather than just a circle. So if you're a dungeon master that wants some really nice fighting pits terrain, then you know where to look. Otherwise, we normally build our stuff using warlock tiles and 3D printed buildings. But there is an upcoming tavern Kickstarter that I will be printing because it's designed so that I can print it on my resin printer as well. which really just means much higher quality than printing an FDM. Because unless your FDM printer is super tuned, it's gonna always have small issues that are a lot easier to get rid of in resin. It's also being run by a friend of ours. He is the creator behind Dragon Workshop, which did the Shipworks Kickstarter, which lets you build modular ships from all kinds of stuff. So if you're looking for some really nice tavern pieces and miniatures to go with that, then you should check out his Kickstarter. I should link it. Let me go find it. Scroll. Where did I put that link? Whoops. Just keep scrolling. Where is that link? I swear I had it somewhere. There we go. Gothic Taverns. So if you're running Curse of Strahd, and I know it's a very popular module, or if you just want generic taverns that you can modify as you need to, you should follow that Kickstarter campaign. Because most of the pieces will be sized so that even if you have a smaller resin printer, you can print most of them. And hopefully not wasting too much resin. Because there's one thing I also dislike about a lot of the terrain design nowadays, it's that a lot of them have very thick inner walls. So this one has slightly thinner walls, and they're done on a system so that if you need to readjust what's inside the tavern, you can just remove them. You can just pull them out because they slot right in. It's pretty cool. And that's also why I like 3D printing, because it is Lego on steroids. Ha. Oh, and by the way, both Crimson and I contributed our voices for that Kickstarter's video, launch video. So you might hear us in there if you listen in. And I'm sure it won't be too hard to spot us. Hopefully. I don't usually voice act myself. Because voice acting is tiring. Acting is tiring. I need naps. No DM, only paint. Though a lot of our friends have been asking me to DM more. For some strange reason. Do not understand why. but I wish to paint, and therefore I will continue painting. Plus, Crimson can DM but cannot paint. Though I'm sure that if he really tried, would it be that bad? It's just an excuse for him to not try. Look, anyone can paint. We've seen that. So recently, and I feel like a proud mom here, but we've had a lot of people come by recently and joined us for our paint nights. And a lot of them were complete newbies in miniature painting. So notice I'm adding a little bit of white in here because I want a slightly different tone. But, a lot of them were complete newbies in miniature painting. And at the end of the day, they walked away with like fairly decent paint jobs. Like, would it win contests? Maybe not, but the paint jobs they walked away with for a few hours work were like way above the average WizKid standard, for example. Like, way above the average P-painted standard. No one's asking you to draw. The 3D printer has already sculpted the piece, you just apply paint. But yeah, and like for me, I don't think that everyone has to be a pro painter. But ideally, I would like for everyone that comes to try painting to at least be able to kind of push out a miniature that they can be happy with. And if they want to get better at painting, they should have an idea about what they can improve or work on slowly. But most importantly, if they come by our studio and paint for a few hours, at least it may be more productive than painting at home. And they can have other people give them feedback about their painting, which can be really helpful. There's some things like painting techniques, the amount of paint that you're thinning, for example, it can be a little hard to get feedback from that unless it's in person. But teaching people how to paint is pretty fun. And I'm really proud of what some people have done in the short time that they've learned. And honestly speaking, I wish there had been people that were a little better at teaching painting when I first started. I say it pretty often, but it was really a rough start because people didn't understand what a newbie painter would have trouble with. Or they were so used to the style of painting that the idea of anyone wanting to try a little more or do a little better was just out of this world. It's like when I ask, how can I blend my paint so that my gradients look a little smoother? They're just like, don't bother, just base coat, wash, and then dry brush highlight, and you are done. And while that does work, I don't deny. If you're completely new to miniature painting, it does require a little bit more finesse than that. And it took me a long, long time to get the confidence to even go back to painting miniatures again after like the first couple of times. So if you want to like talk about painting miniatures at a higher standard, I've only been painting them seriously for like 2 years. And I got the skills that I use for painting miniatures from painting terrain. Because after the bad experiences, I just didn't really want to go back to painting miniatures. Because if I paint a piece of rock and it doesn't look quite right, it's just a piece of rock. It's an ugly rock. But if I paint a human face and it looks weird, then that's very discouraging. Because you might not know what a piece of rock looks like when painted. But we all know when a human face is off. How different is tabletop stuff to paint when compared to EVA foam? Painting terrain is the most like painting EVA foam or armor as we used to make. With EVA foam, I tended to use a lot of spray paints. But I'll say that if I can paint a miniature, it's a lot easier to paint a cosplay costume. Because you will understand colors a lot more easily. When I was doing cosplay costumes, yes, I did care about colors, but it was more along the lines of, hey, which rattle can paint can I get a nice color from? Can I get a nice finish from? And when I'm painting a cosplay costume, I tend to be a little bit more focused on having a finish or special effect as compared to when I'm painting something for the tabletop where the smaller details are more important. But at the end of the day, if you know what you're doing, a lot of these different skills all feed into each other. Things like knowing how to use a paintbrush are quite beyond some people, for example. Things like, knowing what thinner is and how to mix paint in is not always the most natural. And yeah, do you guys have anyone that you think we should rate? Let's get this rate train going before we wrap up slightly earlier for tonight. And also, if you don't mind listening to me rambling to myself as I paint things strange colors, please drop us a follow. I'm normally painting on the weekend, so if weekends are a good time for you to listen to streams, then do drop by. Note, I shall put this down and I shall start taking a look at people that are streaming in the D&D section. And then Crimson can take us all raiding somewhere. I just wash off my brush. If there's one thing about painting terrain, especially with like the chunkier paints, you need to really wash your brushes. Okay. Let's go. Is there anyone streaming right now that we can raid? Is there anyone crafting or doing painting things? Do I have any friends right now that are live? Let's check. It's not D&D, but there was something else I was painting. You saw a small time VTuber doing D&D. Well, it sounds kind of fun. That sounds like a great place to go, actually. So you can get us, ready for the raid. Are they doing COS? That's awesome. I see that also a few interesting people, I guess. But either way, thanks everyone for keeping me company for tonight. I know that tonight's stream is a little shorter than usual, but it was really fun just casually working on stuff, having you guys rate me, and talking about all kinds of our favorite games, why I paint my wood yellow, because wood is different for everyone. And I'm looking forward to our next couple of streams, so if you want to hang out with us again tomorrow, you should be on around this time. Come with us as we start streaming for the next D&D Direct live from Wizards. Yeah, just like Crimson said down in chat. And if you can't always make it at this time, if it's a little weird for you, then be sure to follow us on Instagram, whether it's at Neo Tokyo Project or at Jazion Kira. These are the places that you want to go if you want to see us paint more things. And if you want to as well, you should join us on Discord. Our Discord chat is also in the social media links down below that Crimson will just post shortly. Right, Crimson? Posting? Okay. Either way, that's a place to go if you want to like hear us talk about miniature painting. If you want to post your stuff and get some feedback from me, some small tips on how you can improve. I try my best. I am not the best, but I do hope that having some feedback can help you work on what you're painting better. We also have a small community of miniature painters, D&D players that just love what we do, and we just have fun hanging out and being a chill community together. So that's the most important thing, that we try and be supportive to each other. So first of all, let's get our raid lined up. Who are we raiding tonight? Who is the VTuber? Orangey? Alright, can you line up the raid for that? Or should I be typing it in myself? I think you can type it in for us. There we go. Alright. I hope you guys are ready to raid. And most of all, once again, thank you for coming by. I hope you had fun. And I'll see you around. Over and out.